we were discussing if we want to throw the ball into the hoop when we're playing Rage Ball, and we were trying to figure out if it's like a strength or a dexterity or something. A physics skill would solve this problem. Because now the physics of it are, I now know what kind of force and direction I need, an angle, in order to take Mr. Ball and put it into Mr. Hoop. Way back when, on episode 6, we discussed skills. In an episode called It's What I Do Best. Do you remember this?
Nope.
Cool.
I think you might be under the assumption my memory works on any basis farther than 3 weeks out.
So 9 years is a little bit too far, huh?
Yeah, ADHD kills that memory pretty well.
Okay.
9 years is a lot.
Anyway, let me see if I can refresh the data banks that are logged into the back of your head. In that time, we were talking about the basics of skills, and basically why skills are in RPGs. That was the basic thing that we were doing, and why we have them. It has been 9 years. We have occasionally talked about skills on the show. We are familiar with it. But what I wanted to actually talk about were some skills that maybe we wish were in RPGs that you don't usually see. Ones that are not always represented, or might not be specifically represented in RPGs that could be useful. I have a few, and
Sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about them. The first one is actually one I have to say, though, this has been represented in games for me, but if you're familiar with, like, a D&D or, a lot of fantasy ones, this will not be there. I usually just call it the MacGyver skill, which is the ability to just take stuff and merge them together to create something else. Basically, just to jury-rig something together. Not really a skill in D&D.
I feel like the Warhammer RPGs have something akin to that.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that I can reference is when I was playing 1879. I was a weird scientist, and so my whole thing was making little creations out of stuff that I could put together, and it was a skill called bodge up, which is basically that. You're just taking a bunch of elements and you're putting it together and straining yourself so that you essentially have like a one-use magic item that can do one of a variety of spells. Almost basically like spell effects. But they don't really have something if you're looking at like a Dungeons & Dragons, and I think we were mostly talking about skills in terms of like D&D and the wide range of ones that they've had over the years.
Yeah. I feel like that in D&D would be more specialized to a specific class like Tinkerer.
I could see an Artificer using it.
Or an Artificer, yeah.
A lot. Yeah. I feel like that would be a very useful one. I could not think of a single one of the skills that it utilizes, in 5e at least, where that would be applicable. I don't even know what the closest thing would be when we're coming to essentially like an engineering skill.
Yeah, they don't really have a
sorts.
lot of that in D&D these days. I feel like the closest thing to it would be like a craft skill.
Yeah. They used to have that, right? In like 3 or 3.5? They used to have some
Yeah, and you can
crafting.
still take professions and things like that in D&D 5e, I'm pretty sure. But it's
Sure.
not focused on as much, at least on the player's sheet side of things.
Maybe what they figure is that, like, the craftsman kits, sort of like they have the thieves' tools, but they also have carpentry tools and those things. Maybe those would be useful for something like that.
A jury rig or a, fix it or whatever. I think that's like an improv type skill too.
I could see where they might just make you do, like, a straight up, either a dexterity roll or maybe an intelligence roll, depending on what you're trying to make. To accommodate that, but I'd kind of like to see it as an actual skill you utilize. There's a lot of classes that might benefit from that. Obviously, artificers are one of them, but I could even see rogues having
Sorcerers.
usefulness. Sorcerers, yeah, absolutely. And more too, that I like the idea of being able to create like single-use items, and I think that would be helpful for that. Here's one based on a lot of the conversations that we've had, and I don't really think there's a skill that fits this most of the time in RPGs. Physics. And I'm gonna tell you why, because like when you would talk about like the rail guns, and we'd make peasant rail guns, or we would literally make light rails or something like that. I feel like there should be a skill to actually do that specific, like to figure out how to do the physics of a thing to make something work. If I'm going to use a catapult, I need some way of being able to figure out that I'm going to accurately hit my target in the catapult.
Okay, so I think what you want to do is expand the knowledge, if we're using D&D as the basics for this.
Sure.
You would like to expand the knowledge categories from religion, arcane, and nature to include science and engineering.
Sure, let's do that. Mostly so that we can solve a problem we were even talking about on the last episode. We were discussing if we want to throw the ball into the hoop when we're playing Rage Ball. And we were trying to figure out if it's like a strength or a dexterity or something. A physics skill would solve this problem. Because now the physics of it are, I now know what kind of force and direction I need, an angle, in order to take Mr. Ball and put it into Mr. Hoop. I now know how to do that, and you don't have to, like, work it out based on other skills.
Right. I mean, it would still most likely be an intelligence-based skill set.
I would imagine.
Science, engineering, and math.
Yeah. It's not a wisdom.
Although you could probably wisdom one of those, either engineering or science.
Mm-hmm.
Probably engineering.
Yeah.
Science is knowing how to put the thing together. Wisdom is knowing that putting it together means you should point the trebuchet at your enemy and not you.
Then there was another one that was actually more of a social skill. Because typically what we have in D&D is like we have, intimidation, persuasion.
Diplomacy. Oh, yeah. Diplomacy, persuasion, same thing.
Well, you say that, and I'm thinking, like, we don't really have diplomacy. And so I was thinking... They used to, but they don't now. I was thinking about, actually, a couple things. The first one was debate. Just because I think that the idea of persuasion doesn't really suggest that you would actually have, like, a back and forth where you can actually argue a point with somebody.
Well, the thing about a debate is that you're not going to roll skill checks for debate, typically.
Okay.
You might be like, let's have a debate. Sure, okay, make your point and then roll charisma.
Right, and that's a straight charisma roll. Do you think...
Or you might be like, use your intelligence modifier, because you're making a debate based on intelligence, with the science of where you should do the trebuchet.
Yeah, or the thing that I would normally do is that if you're going to debate a point, you have to kind of actually do that debating of the point in character, not as a skill, but as your character, you gotta kind of make the case. But that does kind of make me think about the idea of social skills being difficult to put into a format like a skill, because so much of it is supposed to be roleplay, and can be used
I mean the part of that too is I don't expect every player to be able to necessarily roleplay out exactly like the best points in it. Like if you're gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna debate with this guy about religion, it's like, make it sound good, but I don't expect you to give me a philosophical argument. Like, make it sound kind of good and then kind of roll for it, buddy.
And then the other one I was thinking about was like mediation, which is also like a social skill, but I feel like that's mostly to try and de-escalate situations, because like I suppose persuasion would work for that, but I feel like persuasion isn't quite the same thing as like actually mediating a situation, like you being a third party for other people to try like almost like a support skill.
Yeah.
For like you have a member of your party that's dealing with the local warlord, and you have a barbarian who decides that they want to persuade the local warlord and is doing a terrible job of it because it has no social skills. Something like mediation, so that you, the bard or the rogue, in this case, can come in and kind of go, let me give you a hand, almost like a help action on a specific thing.
I feel like a barbarian should do well with a warlord. They both understand feats of strength.
Can you roll charisma but use your strength skill?
Yeah.
It's charisma strength?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It's kind of like using intimidation but with strength.
Oh, okay. So, what's that ritual that the Klingons do with the bat'leths?
I don't know. I don't any Star Trek at all.
Okay. Whatever that is, that could be what the skill is called. It's a negotiation with using weaponry. The other one that I was thinking about, although I figure that we've kind of already covered it, I said math. Because I think I'm, at this point, just trying to put STEM skills into RPGs.
Yeah, apparently. I'm just going to make the STEM RPG.
It's just science, technology, engineering, and math, folks. I'm just going to make the STEM RPG. Well, you know, NASA, put out an RPG, right? So...
It did.
Yeah, so, hey, I guess it's still working on the D20, D&D system, so... There's a great scenario, if you think about it. Just going to science camp, space camp. Ooh, space camp RPG. Those are the only skills you need at that point. And also, not being a nerd.
Right.
Or being really nerdy. Those should be skills. I guess my point was that I feel like there are some more specific skills for specific things that you could probably utilize. And I know that, in D&D, there's basically open lines for specific things that you can put in that's just player choice. You know, that you can make a custom skill for those.
Kind of, I guess. A lot of the time, those blank skills were left open to, say, different knowledges or different crafts or professions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really a thing that's really told you what to do in that sense. So
I remember Rembrandt had a plus 50 to confusion as a special skill.
Always confused.
Yeah, whenever Dom would ask me to roll, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got a 58. Oh yeah, he's really confused, Nathan. There could be skills that are specific to classes too, which is something we didn't really discuss about before, but the idea that you would actually have customized skills that were for specific classes would be really useful.
If you have any skills that you think should be represented or are misrepresented in tabletop RPGs or computer RPGs for that instance, let us know down in the comments below.
You know, the thing that always confused me about the existing skills in 3.5 was knowledge skills, because I always tried to figure out how you're supposed to utilize them and in what ways.
What? How?
In 3.5.
There are still knowledge skills in 5e.
They just don't call them knowledge skills, though. They are,
though.
Well, I guess so.
They're knowledge arcana.
No, it's just called arcana now.
Well, it's a knowledge skill. It's an intellect-based skill.
It doesn't say knowledge in front of
knowledge?
it. No, it's just called arcana. And nature is just nature. Go look at the sheet. I'm not making it up.
I don't have a...
You can look at the sheet. Anyway, the point of the matter is, I'm right and Alex is wrong. That's really the point that I'm trying to make. Okay, fine. Open the player handbook.
Yeah, it's just called arcana. You're right. They did simplify the skill sheet a lot for 5e, which is nice.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a lot less skills than the 3.5 had by about at least half. You know, looking at the 5e player handbook and the character sheet right now, it does make me realize that as much as I do love how simplified this is, I do enjoy, I already knew this, I do enjoy a robust selection of skills as well.
Yeah.
3.5 was incredibly fun and mechanically heavy, comparatively speaking, but also made it so that characters felt vastly different depending how you specialize in your skills.
Yeah. It's similar to Fallout, because when they did the Bethesda Fallouts for 3, they de-emphasized skills in general and simplified them a lot, and the ones in the earlier, Black Isle Studios ones, it vastly changed how your character developed based on what you were willing to put single points into. So skills can be a really useful thing, or they can just be supplanting, but generally I want them to do something interesting. But at any rate, you let us know in the comments down below how you feel about skills.